Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, to this joint Capgemini, Lohika, and AWS reInvent panel around resiliency and agility. I want to thank everybody for making time in their calendars to join us today as we discuss some of the most important announcements made during reInvent and the impact of those announcements on your business. My name is Nico Steenkamp. I'm the Global Amazon Partner Exec at Capgemini and will be your host and moderator for this reInvent panel. I think we have a very interesting agenda for you today, kicking off with a 60-minute panel consisting of cloud experts from Cleveland Research Company, Airbnb, AWS, and Capgemini itself. I will ask these panelists to introduce themselves in a little bit. After this panel, we will continue for a 30-minute one-on-one with Jonny Moseley, an Olympic and World Cup champion in Mogul skiing, so very exciting to hear what Jonny has to say as well. I have to say, it is great to once again reInvent, although virtual this year, but the announcements made over the past 2 weeks have once again been phenomenal, like the new machine learning features for Aws Connect, the EKS, ECS container services able to run on-prem. Think about the Amazon Lookout for Vision to simplify defect detection for manufacturing, and also the new EC2 instances powered by AWS Graviton 2 processors to drive down costs. Now, I know not everyone is familiar with Capgemini or Lohika, so here is a short introduction of both. Capgemini is a global leader in consulting, digital transformation, technology, and engineering services. The Capgemini Group is at the forefront of innovation to address the entire breadth of clients' opportunities in the evolving world of cloud, digital, and platforms. We are a company that is headquartered in France, spanning the globe. Lohika, which is part of the Capgemini Group, partners with growth stage technology companies to help them engineer the next big thing. They collaborate closely with their clients' engineering organizations to transform them from bottlenecks to growth drivers. Lohika's teams work on core product development involving challenging leading-edge technologies. I want to talk a bit about our relationship with AWS. So Capgemini has been partnering with AWS since 2008 and is a premier consulting partner of AWS, with more than 3,000 people certified on AWS globally, and holds several AWS competencies like migration, SAP, financial services, and is also a launching partner of the recently announced travel and hospitality competency, as well as Amazon Lookout and AWS Panorama. So we've been working with AWS for more than 10 years very successfully and supporting our joint customers on their journey to the cloud. However, before we go further, I would like to play a short video demonstrating what Capgemini is doing to combat climate change and support environmental sustainability. There'll be a short 5 to 10 second delay on either side of the video, so please bear with us.
The tail of sperm whale is kind of like a fingerprint. They have a distinct shape, so we can keep track of them for pretty much their whole life. I'm Lisa Steiner. I'm a marine biologist. I've been watching a few of the whales now for almost 35 years. My job is the best job in the world.
Capgemini is a global leader in consulting, technology, transformation, committed to fighting for climate change and also environmental sustainability. Global Data Science Challenge at Capgemini is a training event to train our teams to apply most advanced AI technologies to solve real-world problems. This year's challenge, we decided to partner with AWS to use AI to identify the fingerprint of the whale, which is the fruit. Our partnership with AWS, with APN, we've been on an amazing journey over the last 10 years. The way we do with data management, whether it's insights and data quality, this is where we bring the true value to the clients. Whenever we need something, APN is ready to give us all the support we need. Lisa Steiner has 20 years of these images. There's no way you'll be able to manually analyze these amount of the data. It has to be through any kind of a machine learning, deep learning engine to get any meaningful insights.
This is the old-fashioned way of matching. So when you have nicks, they're not as easy to see, which is one of the reasons why it's important to have a program that's doing it automatically.
With AWS, we'll be helping her move all these images to the cloud. With AI, we can identify spam well against the data sets that we have.
They've trained it to recognize the contour of the edge. It finds matches that, looking by eye, I would never find. So I'm getting back a system that will save me time.
With GDSC this year, I'm very grateful for the co-sponsorship that APN provides. We see the benefits of AI for the environment. That's the reason I'm excited. The way we're going with machine learning, that's the future. It's the future for AWS and the Capgemini.
The whole idea of this project with Capgemini is to catch the public's imagination and get them submitting photos from places where I would never go. That's the beauty of what Capgemini has done for me.
Wow, I have to say, every time I watch that video, it's still cool to watch to see what we can do to save the sperm whale, something that's very relevant in these days and day and age. Just one other thing on the logistics. If you have any questions during the event, please post them in the chat window and we'll try to answer them by the panel. So before wasting too much time, let's go to the panel, and I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. So starting with Ari, then Phil, then Jason, please.
Thanks, Nico. Very nice to meet everybody. My name is Ari Turjanian, and I am a senior analyst and partner at the Cleveland Research Company, covering cloud and software. And I write and provide research on the leading cloud and software vendors for the top investors and system integrators in the ecosystem.
Thanks, Ari. My name's Phil LeBrun. I'm part of the AWS Enterprise Strategy team, having previously held senior technology roles at McDonald's Corporation. The Enterprise Strategy team, it consists of former CTOs and CIOs from major enterprises and public sector organizations. And we use our history and knowledge of driving transformations and working with AWS to help our own customers transform their businesses.
Thanks, Phil. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jason Hatch. I lead Capgemini's Enterprise Cloud Platforms Group here in North America. I've been working with AWS since 2010 and helped launch our practice back then. They've been a wonderful partner of ours ever since. Nico?
Thank you very much, Jason, and thanks, Ari and Phil. So the first question I want to ask goes to you, Ari. So reInvent is always a rapid download of a vast number of innovations and new products to help customers migrate to the cloud or innovate and lower costs. Can you give us your views on this reInvent and the trends AWS announced? What was one standout announcement that you think that customers should investigate further?
Sure. Yeah, Amazon never failed to impress with the just variety and list of announcements that can just churn out every year, reInvent through the course of the year. A lot to digest. You know, from our research perspective, we specialize on, we dictate feedback that we get from developers, customers, and partners dictates our views on the market. I think two things stood out from all the keynotes and announcements. First, new enhancements that got developers really excited. And second, pushing the envelope further on the hybrid story. So first, a few things that the developers that we've spoken with seem pretty excited about. First out the gate, Mac OS on EC2. Across the board, developers we've heard from seem very excited about the ability to build OS apps, be it for desktop or mobile, directly on their AWS operating environment. The big call out here is that they will no longer have to use an emulator to build these applications. Next, in the areas of serverless and containers, a few things. Millisecond billing for Lambda, very exciting. You know, prior to this announcement, developers would be charged for every 100 millisecond increments. Now you get down to the millisecond, and we've heard there are significant cost savings to be had there. Continuing in the vein of serverless, one of the themes that Andy Jassy referred to through the keynote, and we've seen in our research as well, is accelerating adoption and demand for both containers as well as serverless. To that end, different customers are in different stages of this journey around cloud native development. I know, Nico, your team has done a lot around helping customers around that. But developers seem really excited about container images now to be supported on Lambda. So essentially, any app that you've created in a container can now be executed as in a Lambda function. Furthermore, kind of addressing this blurring of the lines, so to speak, AWS came out with Proton, allowing folks to manage their container and serverless applications from a single place. And last that we'd heard from the developers, some positivity was around Aurora Serverless 2.0. So everybody hopefully should be aware of Aurora, one of the fastest growing offerings from Amazon, MySQL oriented database. In prior reInvents, a serverless iteration of this was announced. However, it required developers to have a cold start to launch an application. With this new version 2.0, the cold start issue has been addressed, and it seems like developers are really excited about this. While all these innovations for developers are great, now we're seeing that Amazon is helping customers by making more of their offerings and innovation available both in their cloud, but also in on-premises environments. You mentioned earlier, Nico, the announcement around ECS and EKS Anywhere, the Kubernetes service and Amazon's container service, now available anywhere, meaning you can run these container applications on-premise as well as in the cloud. And this is really seen helping customers achieve a consistent development environment and operating model. Similarly, in the area of hybrid, we've also seen the Outpost announcement. Prior feedback in our research indicated while Outposts was attractive, customers would have preferred it to be in smaller composable pieces. Prior, you have to buy a 42 rack Outpost. Now you can get 1 or 2 U instances, and these are seen addressing edge scenarios. And last, on the hybrid front, local zones. We think this is next phase of investment from Amazon in terms of their network and data center build-outs. They're going from 1 today to 4 this year and 16 next year. So overall, I'd say the announcements around hybrid and edge stood out to us the most, and we're really excited to see the innovation that's come out of AWS here.
Thanks, Ari. I appreciate your views on that, and I totally agree with you. I think hybrid becoming more and more important, especially the edge computing as well, leveraging that. The next one I'm going to throw out to the panel. In his keynote, Andy Jassy talked about speed to market and innovate or die. In these unprecedented times and our theme of agility and resiliency, what is your experience with this, and how has AWS helped? Ari, do you want to go first, then Jason and Phil, please?
Sure. So, I think what's been notable from our research this year, Andy touched on it in his keynote, COVID's accelerated cloud adoption, but I think the key is how has cloud helped people this year? So from a resiliency standpoint, a few things. First, just in terms of the resiliency of Amazon's cloud, when COVID first hit, you saw spikes in demand from customers in verticals that saw spikes in demand in their own business. So you saw spikes in e-commerce, electronic gaming, streaming, CPG companies. All these vertical markets saw huge hits on their business and unprecedented waves of demand. The ability for these customers to scale up and address the demand really spoke to the power of the cloud. And for Amazon specifically, the way that they architect their cloud and their philosophy behind building out availability zones and regions, in terms of the redundancy and having multiple data centers per region, really was tested during COVID. And I would say, they performed well. Some other cloud providers, when the pandemic hit, customers couldn't add new virtual machines in certain regions as a result of, cloud providers seeing demands on their collaboration business or gaming business. But, by and large, it seemed like Amazon was able to add capacity. Similarly, customers that were in industries that got hit by COVID, they're able to elastically scale down and save on cost and keep the business running. So those are just some areas that jump to mind when COVID first hit, and how Amazon's really helped through being resilient. I don't know if Jason or Phil had thoughts to add, but those were some things that.
Ari, absolutely, thank you for that. I think one of the things and I spend lots of my time talking to our customers, and it's been a challenging year for everyone, right? If you look at late Q1, early Q2, we had customers that needed to go virtual in really days, right? Days, weeks of time to transform how they run their business. We had workforces that had to shift from home. We had to stand up new ways of engaging with customers and deploying new channels to connect with them. Even here at Capgemini, we had to deploy hundreds of Amazon workspaces and VDIs to just be able to connect and support customers who had specific requirements and needs for security and access. But there was a silver lining from all of this, right? We saw customers who may have been slow to adopt be forced to innovate. And what that has now done has really unlocked the ability for them to know and understand that it's okay to innovate rapidly and be more willing to experiment and try new capabilities and technologies. And really, when you start looking at that, how can you not be rapid and speedy without partnering with Amazon and the breadth of services that they provide you as tools to unlock business value for your for your company or your customers? I mean, in particular, I'm really excited about the announcements this week around Aws Connect. Early this year, we had lots of agencies we work with, lots of customers spin up Connect because they needed rapid scale for those contact centers and customer engagement models, right? With the workflow and the enhancements that have been announced this year, this reInvent around machine learning and low-code workflow capabilities, I mean, there's so much opportunity to leverage that initial investment they made into improving overall customer engagement. So we're looking forward to working with customers around that and the other capabilities that have been announced this reInvent. Phil?
Yeah, you mentioned Connect, Jason. I think what we've seen is customers being able to pivot really quickly in the cloud to address customer needs and to preserve liquidity. We've seen supermarkets scale up Amazon Connect call center utilization to cope with dealing with the same number of calls in one day they'd normally take in a month. We've seen customers in the food delivery business do the same, seamlessly coping with the demand that's come in. But at the other end of the spectrum, we've seen customers in the hotel and airline business scale down consumption in the cloud as business has dried up, helping them preserve liquidity. We've also seen companies in the pharmaceutical industry accelerate their time to market using ML in the cloud. So it's been a tough year, but I think we'll look back on this year and see that the digital transformations in many companies have been accelerated from years to months. And Jeff Bezos said in one of his shareholder letters that the only real sustainable competitive advantage is agility. And this year's been a wake-up call for us all and for many companies, with this need to be able to react quickly to competitive opportunities, but also to changes in the political, economic, or social landscape as well.
All right, thank you very much, guys. Very insightful on that. Jason, I've got a question for you. There has increased conversation at reInvent around migrating existing SAP workloads and leveraging the benefits of cloud. Does this finally unlock businesses from costly legacy infrastructure, and how does this benefit customers?
Yeah, Nico. I mean, when we talk to customers around business critical workloads such as SAP, I mean, you're really looking for a platform that has the the security and reliability to run these types of workloads and the business processes that companies have within their SAP environments. I mean, it's a scenario where if there's unexpected or unanticipated outages, you literally can bring a company to a halt and they can't transact in numerous areas. What you also want, though, and what we're looking for more and more is performance and scalability. SAP rolled out their HANA database technology, which is an in-memory database, a number of years ago. And as companies have adopted that, we're now seeing requirements for larger and larger instances and workloads to maintain that. And AWS provides up to 24 terabytes in a single instance, which, I mean, there's very few workloads globally that can't run in that type of scale and size, which is critical for long-term supportability on any platform. So technically and operationally, there are really no limitations or concerns around running SAP on AWS. They've got an extremely long track record. I mean, Capgemini, we deployed our first our SAP customers to AWS in 2010, which in cloud years is so long ago. I mean, with the rapid scalability of the innovation. But really what I think is interesting around leveraging AWS for SAP is customers are now rolling out the newest version of SAP, which is S4. And it's being being deployed not in the waterfall manner that SAP has traditionally been deployed in, but in a very agile and cloud native model. Customers traditionally did a lot of their customization of SAP within the application, which made it challenging to maintain and upgrade it going forward, right? You had to count and retrofit all that customization code that you developed. But with S4, SAP really designed the application with intent of not building within the core, but surrounding that core and data and business process layer with extended functionality that really would be delivered as cloud native applications. They call this the extended enterprise. So when you deploy S4 on AWS, you get the reliability and operational efficiencies of the AWS platform for that digital core area. But you also have access to all the AWS services that Ari just highlighted and capabilities that become the building blocks for those extended enterprise apps, where you're going to customize that business functionality. I mean, here at Capgemini, we've developed a repository of predefined microservices and business blueprints we call DCP, Digital Cloud Platform, that leverages AWS in the background to really accelerate the development of cloud native applications for our customers. And in collaboration with AWS over the last couple of months, we've expanded that repository to integrate with SAP. So we're now better able to leverage AWS services in our SAP deployments. We're going to be announcing this later on this week, which we're very excited about, but we believe this DCP for SAP accelerator and framework can reduce the development of these extended enterprise applications by up to 50%. So tremendous value to unlock business functionality for our customers. So Nico, I mean, in summary, AWS continues to provide one of the most reliable and cost-effective platforms for hosting SAP, while also allowing customers to really unlock the business value of all the services within the AWS platform.
Thanks, Jason. And yes, definitely, I mean, the breadth and the scale of AWS is just mind-blowing. So unlocking the legacy is definitely key, and supporting customers to create more business value for them. I want to switch quickly and go to another very interesting topic that's growing a lot, and that's around artificial intelligence and machine learning. So Phil and Ari, as AI and ML adoption grows and AWS continues to announce new capabilities, what advice do you give to customers who have not invested in this space, and where do they start? I think maybe Phil, you want to go first?
Sure, thanks, Nico. It's been a really interesting year. I mean, there's so much happening in the ML space. It had its own keynote, and we saw numerous announcements, particularly around SageMaker, but also you mentioned things like Panorama and Lookout earlier on as well. And it's a hot topic with customers. I hear a lot of customers talk about digital transformations and becoming data enabled, but often they struggle to articulate the how of these aspirations. And yet ML is unleashing massive opportunities across every industry. So typically when we talk to customers, we outline 5 elements to get started on their ML journey. The first is education. AI and ML are enablers, they're not outcomes in themselves. So helping everyone from the board on down understand what AI and ML mean to your organization is a key first step. Secondly, upskilling your employees with the help of partners. ML is mainly a science rather than an art. So understanding how to approach problems and apply this technology is important. And it's a key part of change management, ensuring you bring the organization along willingly. The third is the successful application of AI to your business shares the same characteristics as we talk about with agile organizations. A willingness to experiment and the ability to experiment and learn fast using cross-functional teams. When we talk about success factors in agile, resilient organizations, I find I spend probably 70% of the conversation on the cultural imperatives. Like any effective technology, the power of AI comes from its application to real-world issues and turning insights into action. And this ultimately requires changes to business processes, operating norms, and even the roles employees fill. So really making employees and leaders comfortable with this idea of experimenting and finding the best approach to tackle issues and opportunities. Fourthly, fundamental to AI is having a clear and active data strategy. It includes a scalable cloud-based data lake, breaking down the silos so data is brought together rather than left in functional or application silos. And as well as understanding how to prepare data. After all, 80% of the time associated to ML still goes into data prep. So some of the announcements at reInvent this year, such as the launch of Amazon SageMaker Data Wrangler, will really help here. And then finally, rinse and repeat so you operationalize and scale these processes. A good starting point here is simply put together a cross-functional team, give them a business outcome to achieve or a problem to solve. Because as Andy Jassy says, there's no compression algorithm for experience.
Thanks, Phil. Ari, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, no, that was great. Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I would just kind of double click on a couple of things that Phil touched on. You know, the 2 areas or the 2 facets that we see impacting or resulting in successful AI or machine learning initiatives at enterprises are A, you have your data in order, and B, you have a narrowly defined use case with a clear business outcome. So let me unpack those a little bit more. First, on getting your data in order. So as Phil touched on earlier around having a clear and active data strategy, I think this is really important. You know, a lot of the failed machine learning initiatives in our research, you know, are just a function of, you know, the company just doesn't take the time to understand what data they have. So, yeah, as Phil was talking about with cross-functional teams, you've got different groups of an organization handling data differently. And, you know, that might mean tagging things differently or calling things that are the same thing differently by different names. And, you know, really going through that data mapping exercise and understanding, you know, what data do we actually have, what's clean, how can we, you know, tag and label everything and make sure it's clean, repeatable, etc. You know, the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. You know, it's very true for AI and ML. You can have the fanciest GPU, you know, whatever software development platform from Amazon, but it doesn't matter if your data is crap. And that's where, you know, partners can help, you know, certainly from a skills perspective, helping you go through that exercise of understanding what data you have, integrating it across your different from your different systems, be it ERP, CRM, operational data, etc. I completely agree around the announcements that Amazon came out with Data Wrangler as well as Glue Elastic Views. Simplifying that ETL and data prep cleansing process. And I'd also call out a previous announcement from a prior year, SageMaker Ground Truth, which can be used for uses machine learning for data labeling. It's kind of meta. So the first one is get your data in order. Partner help is pretty crucial in that front. The second would just be identifying a use case of a clear business outcome. So the other area where we see machine learning initiatives fail is when the vision is too grand. Certainly you can have a big vision, but when you execute it, you want to have more narrowly defined use cases. If you shoot too big, it'll be easy for your teams to get frustrated. Project might take too long. Where we see people be successful is when they break projects up into kind of smaller pieces. So one example, if you're developing a fraud detection system for credit card transactions, instead of trying to flag that across your body of transactions across the globe, focus on a specific geography or customer cohort. Similarly, if you're developing a chatbot for customer service inquiries, instead of again rolling it out across all your applications and websites across the globe, focus on a specific product or region where you could deploy that chatbot. So the two things, again, going back, would be get your data in order, and then identify a use case of a clear business outcome. And I think these will be these in our history have been the most successful machine learning and AI types of projects.
Thanks, Ari. Appreciate that. And I totally agree with you. Data is key and really front and center for AI ML, because without the data and the correct data, you cannot do anything. So data is really key, and to have the skills as well to interpret the data, to really go and see what you can do with the data. Also, that combination makes the differentiating factor for me. We've talked about containers, we talked about serverless. I've got a question here, and it says, delivering apps at the pace of innovation will be key to drive greater business value through modernization. We also touch about the legacy systems, how to modernize your old legacy applications as well. So the question is, how does containerization and serverless support that modernization? Jason, you want to take this first, and then Ari and Phil?
So, one, I think we've seen some very interesting announcements this week. The ability to essentially manage containers anywhere.
Sorry, Jason, your audio is very low there.
Better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, sorry about that. So I think some of the announcements this week has shown there's an opportunity to really leverage AWS to manage containerization anywhere in an ecosystem. And certainly we've seen numerous studies over the years that show the efficiencies and the value and the speed of leveraging containerization and serverless to manage applications going forward. So right off the bat, by leveraging these technologies, we should free up more time from developers and engineers to work on more business relevant opportunities and tasks. But what I really like about using these technologies to modernize existing portfolios and applications is they really force or really facilitate companies to utilize new best practices and standards across the organization. So developing an effective containerization strategy really requires you to have mature DevSecOps capabilities, right? If you can't automate the packaging and deployment of a container, where's the value of it in your organization, right? Other than another level of management from a infrastructure perspective. So if you drive a strategy that is going to containerize existing applications, you have to develop those prerequisites up front to allow that to be effective. It's really the same with serverless, right? If you look at Lambda, which is the most common used serverless function, right? Effectively, it's a API call or a function, right? If you're going to use that in an application, it forces you to look at re-architecting that application and decoupling it really into those discrete microservices where we want people to go. For new companies that we work with that are engaging in modernization, especially at any sort of scale, we know we have to build this foundation with them. How do you architect or view applications differently? And how do you put the tools and capabilities in place to allow you to move quickly? So when we talk about containerization and serverless as technologies, really what we're doing is helping companies use that modernization technique to really drive the behaviors that we want to nurture in them to be able to build cloud native applications going forward, which is, I think, really where the value is going to be derived long term, not just for this first round of modernization that they go forth with. Ari?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Yeah, I thought, great point around the modernization of teams and how apps are built and delivered. It's a great point. From our perspective, containers and serverless, the main thing that we see, the reason why it's been taking off here, they're just a much more robust and anti-fragile way to build applications. We hear all about these monolithic applications. What does that really mean? It means, if you want to change one part of an application, you have to wait on all the other teams to make these changes, and you can't work concurrently on making updates. Similarly, if one part of a monolithic application breaks, the whole app goes down. Whereas with these microservices type paradigms, you have a much more robust, resilient type of framework to work with. So just from a operational perspective, be it containers, be it serverless, we see this, the robustness as a main driver. Second, as Jason referred to earlier, developers can focus on coding. And so, starting with containers and even more so the hardware component, and Amazon's that, and it really just allows you to focus on building the code. Increasingly, when people go to school for technology, undergrad or grad school, they're not learning about server admin roles or IT operations. Increasingly we're seeing people in school learn about coding, and it's the most in demand job right now. So serverless and containers really, they allow you to build apps faster because it removes this whole function of app development that you have to worry about prior. And just last, by abstracting the infrastructure and some of these layers that we used to deal with, organizations can reduce their dependency on third-party proprietary software vendors, particularly in the areas of middleware and operating systems. More of these areas get abstracted or collapsed in serverless and container environments, and you're able to leverage things like open source and Linux to build. So the robustness, the freedom from proprietary software, and just the agility that comes from building in these environments, I think are all factors to driving modernization. Phil?
I'd pick up on a couple of points, Ari, you made and Jason made. The first session I watched at reInvent was Lego talking about serverless, and it was great watching technologists talk about the value they're delivering to the business. Not about data centers, not about networking. It was about direct value to their business. And I think that's what we're on the cusp of seeing more and more of. Jason, you talked about what we'd call undifferentiated work. I mean, this work that I think over time, organizations are like snowballs. They pick up more and more bureaucracy as time goes by. And a process that may have made sense 20 years ago becomes ingrained in your culture and eats up more and more of your valuable resource. And I think things like serverless is a great example of shifting our valuable resources to focus on what really differentiates customers. Yeah, adding business functionality for their employees and for customers, not on the underlying infrastructure and its management. So this idea of more direct value add from technology, but also, Ari, you touched on this idea of small releases, and we have our 2 pizza teams, the teams that own services end to end and can work autonomously without these massive rituals we get caught up in with so many organizations of governance and coordination and orchestration just to get what seems like a simple piece of business functionality out on a monolith. So this idea of being able to deliver business functionality in smaller bites and doing it faster so organizations can learn, it also brings more predictability around ROI, as well as reduces the blast radius if something does go wrong. So yeah, I think whether the orchestration of these services through services such as ECS or their delivery through Lambda really helps tune organizations' focus to things that really matter to their business.
Thank you very much, guys. That was really insightful. And it is true, serverless, you don't have to worry about your infrastructure. It's really focusing on the applications, the time to market that is shorter, the innovation you can show much faster. Definitely. Ari, unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to you. We're going to replace you with Bruce Chu of Airbnb. So thank you very much for participating. Really appreciate that. And
it was a pleasure.
Stay in touch.
Thank
you very much. While we're waiting for Bruce to join us, a question to you gentlemen. So Jason and Phil, reInvent is in its final week. So what do you suggest customers do as next steps post reInvent? As we are moving into 2021, we know the pandemic will still be with us for at least, I think, middle of the year, maybe later. How do people take advantage of all the new announcements that was done at reInvent to drive their business forward?
I think, Nico, the key is to experiment, right? Let's start talking with our customers around how this new technology can solve the business problems they're facing. And then develop the experiments to either prove out the hypothesis of what we want to drive, or, as AWS likes to say, fail fast and move on to the next experiment and hypothesis to drive forward from a technology perspective. Some of these things are changes to what we've seen from AWS in the past on how they're going to view certain things. Others are iterations of existing capabilities that teams may or may not have already invested in and need to start leveraging from a rollout perspective. But I think the key message is, in what we've seen this year, small incremental innovation can quickly drive business value for customers. So get started immediately and keep on experimenting until you guys hit the things that will drive value for your company.
Well said, Jason. I completely agree. I would re-listen to Andy Jassy's keynote. I think he made some really interesting points about invention and reinvention. It's so easy as businesses to get stuck in the way you've always done business. So number one is, are you really thinking about the art of the possible? And then to Jason's point, I mean, there's so much good technology out there. And the great thing is it's easily accessible and it's easy to learn cost effectively. And when you find those great ideas from those experiments to scale massively in line with demand, things we've simply never been able to do when I was a developer. So getting your hands on, getting that experience, understanding how to apply those to business opportunities or business issues you've had for years, and just get out there and start learning about what that art of the possible is.
Very true, very true. Thank you very much, guys. Now, talking about reinvention there, Phil, I want to bring in Bruce Chu of Airbnb. Airbnb, of course, being a company that has totally disrupted the industry by reinventing something or inventing something, a business model that really took it by storm. So, Bruce, if you want to do a quick introduction of yourself, that will be great.
Hi, Nico. Thanks for having me. My name's Bruce Chu. I'm the head of engineering for our cloud infra org here at Airbnb. Airbnb's been on AWS for around a decade. I've personally been using AWS in a professional capacity for around the same amount of time, around 10 years.
Thanks, Bruce. And I know you guys went through a very interesting IPO last week. Can you tell me something? Airbnb has grown to be a global brand. It's being leveraged across the globe in all countries. How are you guys using AWS to continually transform your business, to stay ahead of the curve, to really go and sort of disrupt yourselves again to stay ahead of the curve? So how does AWS help you do that?
Sure. Airbnb highly leverages AWS infrastructure as a service offerings. S3, EC2, these are embedded in how we do our product development work. So this allows our infra teams to focus further up the tech stack and innovate closer to our customers, Airbnb engineers. As part of the infra team, we provide platforms and systems for our engineering team to do product development. For example, we're heavily invested in Kubernetes. We have over 6,000 nodes running in Kubernetes, and building this on top of AWS really allows us to scale up and down as our business needs it. In some cases, we also selectively leverage AWS's more managed service offerings like Aurora and EMR. I'm going to just highlight EMR a little bit now. EMR has allowed us to really improve the reliability and scalability of our data pipelines, which makes our leaders and our data sciences much more happy and effective. A great example here is by using EMR, we are able to transform and decouple our compute and storage from our data warehouse. That was a big architectural improvement that we were able to do by leveraging AWS managed options. Like kind of creating a global brand. I'll go back to one of your previous questions in this discussion. So this was obviously a year that Airbnb had to demonstrate a lot of agility and resilience as a company. So frontline stays, enhanced cleaning protocols, these are things that we had to put together really quickly when COVID struck. Then a little bit later on in the year, nearby stays, longer term stays. So we were able to emphasize our core business and hosting, but we really needed to adopt to a different world circumstances than pre-COVID. Lots of changes at Airbnb this year. So leveraging AWS allows us to shift quickly from a technology perspective, scaling down, scaling up, which cloud services are being used on the back end to build these different product features, building out new products, launching and scaling up quickly. So as an infra team, we're continuously evolving our technology platforms, AWS, and being able to rely on AWS as just like part of our core solid infrastructure offering just really makes it easy for us as an infra team to enable the product development velocity of our engineering team.
Thanks, Bruce. And yeah, definitely enhancing the teams at the front end really makes the difference, and having them the tools and the capabilities to go and execute is key for success. I have a question for the three of you. For the C-suite, 2021 objectives might be around growth and profit. Agility and resilience could be perceived as too wishy-washy with unproven ROI. How can you convince the C-suite otherwise? Any thoughts, Jason, Phil, or Bruce on that one?
That's a great question. I think what we've seen with customers that adopted early, they had the tools in place to be resilient and reactive to their business needs. Going into 2021, you still need to build upon that foundation. So I think my message to the C-suite would be, yeah, resiliency is that wishy-washy as innovation. Innovation certainly is not wishy-washy. Let's go and define the right use cases and scenarios to drive value from the technology stack on up to enable that.
Yeah, it does sound wishy-washy, but I mean, agility and resilience are two sides of the same coin. I mean, if you look back at the original press for many successful companies that have started over the past couple of decades, you see the same pattern, your skepticism and advocacy for sticking with the status quo. It's certainly true when AWS was born and when Netflix moved from DVD to online. But if you look at the companies that have failed, the root cause is normally the same: not seeing change come into an industry before it's too late, and then being unable to react quickly when they do wake up to that change. So when I talk to execs about whether they want more of their limited time and money focused on things that really matter to their business plans and customers, the answer is always a resounding yes. And to me, that is agility, putting the resource you have, which is always going to be limited, on the things which are going to give you the biggest capability to adapt to changes in the marketplace, or to be that change in your marketplace.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, this was a year that we had to definitely show a lot of flexibility. And I think what we were able to do effectively as an engineering org was to draw the line between flexibility and business value. And then going forward, being able to talk about availability, stability, and also security. So those data points have been pretty valuable for us as we work to create an engineering org that has a lot of agility and resilience built into it.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. I want to close the session with more of a light-hearted question. So, having attended in person in the past years, what was the online experience of attending reInvent for you guys? Anybody want to go?
The thing I loved about this last year, it was busy, full, just meeting customer after customer, which was a great experience. But I actually got to see nothing of the show. So it's been great actually during reInvent being able to see a lot of the keynotes and a lot of the breakout sessions. I've learned a ton in doing that.
Thanks. Jason?
I'd echo that. I think this is my 7th reInvent. And it's one of the most exhausting weeks of the year as someone who's there to unfortunately not always learn, but to meet with customers and meet with our partners. And it's a very, very hectic and long week. And it's been great to listen in on sessions and actually really get more of a pulse and understanding of what the messaging is from AWS and where the new innovations are this year. So it's been much more enjoyable than previous reInvents.
Unfortunately for me, this would have been my first reInvent in person. So I'm just really getting pumped up watching the sessions. I'll be catching up on some of the recordings and looking forward to in-person reInvent next year.
All right. Panelists, thank you very much. I appreciate your time as well today. Really great insights coming back to our customers. So thank you very much. I'm going to switch now to the one-on-one session with Jonny Moseley. So once again, thank you very much. And Jonny, if you want to join, that will be great.
Thanks, Nico.
Mosley's the man. He's absolutely the man.
Somebody that's, one, inspired me so much, and two, done so much for our sport, and I just love getting to spend time with him.
When I started freestyle skiing, it still looked a lot like this. Competitors throwing the same old tricks and lots of rigid rules. Then the 1998 Nagano Olympics happened.
When he threw that 360 nuke grab, I think he did more for Steam that day than a lot of people will do in their entire lifetime. Overnight, transformed a sport from something that was old school and kind of stuck in its ways. Jonny Moseley, I think, single-handedly pulled a sport into mainstream.
In the early 90s, Jonny Moseley was the man on the freestyle team. He was put on the planet to ski moguls.
Skiing brings people together, families, communities. It inspires, it pushes boundaries. It's constantly changing. And to keep at it for this long is a gift.
Hi, Jonny. Welcome to our session. Great to see you again. How did you find the panel discussion that we just had, and how does that impact also from your side?
Oh, hi, Nico. Great to be here. Yeah, I really enjoyed the panel. Great job. Bunch of rock stars on there. I learned a lot. It's funny, containerization. I just got through explaining that to my kids, but the old school containerization, actually, putting containers on ships, and how revolutionary that was. So now I have a whole new digital version to explain to my kids. So great job. I heard so many great terms in there: experimenting, learning. It's educational for a skier like me.
All right, great. For the people that do not know you, can you maybe do a quick introduction yourself, your achievements, or what you have done?
Oh, sure. At the base level, I'm a mogul skier, a freestyle skier, and I'm notable for winning the Olympics in 1998 with a trick called the 360 mute grab, where I grab my skis in a snowboard style fashion. And been to a few Olympics, been to 2 Olympics, and then kind of carried on into mostly TV presenting and marketing.
Okay, very great. So I'm going to ask you a question. We've had the theme of resiliency and agility in the panel. If you look at that, how does that apply to your Olympic ski career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you think about resiliency, when I hear that term, I think it's really the defining factor for I guess athletes in an individual sport like myself. I mean, we spend so much time failing, losing, crashing, enduring pain, that it's if you're not sort of willing to bounce back from all those things quickly, you don't get very far. So it's a defining factor in my career. I think primarily about not making the 1994 Olympics as one of the sort of greater obstacles and motivating factors in my career. There were lots of other ones, but that one really sort of forced me to adjust my whole life, really, and my priorities. By the time I was 19, I think 18, 19, going into that Olympics, and didn't make it. And, you have a lot invested by that time. I was one of those child athletes. So I started competing from a very young age. So, by the time everyone would say, "Oh, you're so young," but that's not the way it is. It was the time invested. So, that forced me to make a lot of changes and sort of reevaluate what I wanted to do. And that's kind of, I think, where the agility portion sort of started to come in. And that really led me kind of from the 94 Olympics to the 98 Olympics. And with some success in 1996, I started to win, my first World Cups, and started to believe that I could be one of those, top champions. But once again, I get on top of the podium. I'm leading the World Cup into the end of the season and have the opportunity to win the whole season and get beat at the last event of the season. And all I had to do was even be within, 4 places of the guy who was in second, and couldn't get it done. And, once again, that was a point where I started to wonder, what am I doing? Like, what's the deal here? How come I can't be? Am I one of those great champions? Could I potentially win the Olympics? And so you start to kind of, reevaluate again. And literally in the year of the Olympics, I kind of had a moment where I realized, I'm not really one of those guys. I don't know if I march in there, then I'm gonna win the Olympics. And the guys who win tend to have these sort of abilities to win on command, and especially if you're looking at an Olympic event, it's a 1-day deal, 2 days really. And, it's not a whole season. You don't get a chance to get it back up and get it again. So you really need to be sort of a dominant figure to make that happen. And I remember being up in Mount Hood, Oregon, and I had that realization. And there was a coach there that I really respected and thought he was, could help me. And he kind of looked at everyone, and we had like a training camp going. And skiing is a weird sport where it's an individual sport. But you train kind of as a team. So it's a little bit weird. Anyway, he said, hey, I don't think any of you guys are really in position to win the Olympics. And, if anyone wants to stay and work through this next little break you guys have coming up here, I'll stay, I'll work with you. And, to my surprise, I was the only one, that stayed, and I rearranged and rearranged my schedule and had to make a bunch of different things happen. And I ended up crashing on his couch, and we just sort of started to dig into each other and into sort of what was it that made these great champions? What was the common thread? Everyone has their own styles. Everyone's done it a different way, but what is the common thread we could dig into? And he kind of found it, and it was very simple. It was like a simple motion that really harkened back to some of the original fundamentals of skiing. And we went up on the hill and tried to work on it. And I thought I was getting it. He thought I was not trying. And so we kind of had these little battles going. And eventually we made this machine, this little machine that allowed me to train after hours, because basically you only get so many runs a day skiing. And so it really helps to be able to go home and kind of work the same fundamentals in his garage. And that really started to change things. It allowed us to really break down the little details. And I bring it up because, at that point I was already winning. I was pretty much the best. I was the best American mogul skier. And so I was in some ways smashing the clay at that point. I mean, I had basically was rewriting a thesis that had built my whole life. And I was just kind of throwing it out the window and restarting, and was breaking down every part of my technique. And, I think that was definitely a moment where I showed some, agility to make changes, even when you're kind of at the top. And it led to an incredible season. I added in a couple other items. I had, I loved snowboarding at the time, and part of freestyle skiing was the tricks, the jumps. And so I sort of took this fundamental turning ability and added it to a really cool trick that had a snowboarding style grab in it. And I put that all together, and it led to me winning the Olympics and the whole World Cup season. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's been critical, that the ability to kind of bounce back and then make changes, even when you're already, considered really at the top or close to the top. Being willing to kind of throw it all away and break it down again is important.
Yeah, really important, and to relate it back to the business as well in these day and age that we're living under these conditions. It's really that ability to adapt, to really come back very rapidly, to do that, to survive as well. So I think it's a very good example in that. I want to ask you about the Mosley Effect, what that is, and I've heard about it. So if you can maybe elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah, so I guess, let's see, where do I start? The Mosley Effect was a term that was used by a great Olympian, a two-time Olympic gold medalist in snowboarding named Shaun White, and amazing athlete. But he coined it based around my performance going back to the 2002 Olympics after the 98 games. And so after the 98 games, my sport was changing. Snowboarding had sort of inspired a whole new generation of skiing. The X Games came into the picture. I needed to move with the sport. I wanted to move with the sport. It's where the progression was going. And I had some success on the free skiing circuit. And I created this trick during that time called the dinner roll. And I used it with a lot of success to win the US Open, the slopestyle, X Games, etc. And when the Olympics came back around in 2002, I thought, wow, if I could put this jump in my mogul skiing run, this could be my 360 mute grab from 1998. This could be my unique selling proposition. This is what will put me over the top. Plus, this is the future of the sport. This is a sport I grew up in. I want to see it progress. It was based on progression. Even in the 70s, this is, how this sport started, was building on what your peers were doing and keeping it going. It's a judge sport, and the sport had sort of stagnated. So I was sort of representing a new era of skiing and, possibly putting something in my run that was going to give me a gold medal. Anyway, long story short, I integrated it into my run. I was able to get it through the International Skiing Federation and get it approved because inverted tricks weren't allowed. And I was able to do it at the 2002 Olympics. And I did it as well as I could do it. I thought that was it. I thought I won that run. But I ended up getting fourth. And it was painful. That's not what I was going for. A lot of people thought, oh, he did it anyway. He knew he was going to lose and he got fourth. And no, I was thinking I was going to go there and win with it and kind of, show the new style of skiing and show the progression we'd be working on. But it was, it turned out to be a little bit too far, I guess, ahead of the curve. So the following year, they changed all the rules, made my trick worth more, and the whole sport has changed consequently to the point where everyone's doing some version of that trick. But back to the Mosley effect is that Shaun White had observed that Olympics. He was too young. He didn't go to that Olympics. And obviously in a different sport, snowboarding, but he had also developed a new trick going into, I believe, Vancouver. And even, you remember the controversy, he built his own private half pipe and he was doing it in secret and all that stuff. But then he decided, instead of surprising the judges with the trick, he actually started to invite judges up to the half pipe and have him watch him in practice and sort of educate them on what the trick, the level of difficulty and what this trick meant and why it was important and why it was hard. And he did that. A lot of people said, well, why did you do that? You're giving away, you're potentially giving away your secret weapon for the Olympics, which is definitely long enough out that someone could learn it 8 months or a year. And he said, well, I don't want to suffer from the Jonny Mosley effect. And, and so what he meant was, he was the mistake I think I made, which was, I think if you're gonna have something that is new, interesting, innovative, inventive, you can't assume that everyone and the people around you are going to understand it and automatically adopt it or give it credit. You sort of have to educate them a little bit, I guess, and sort of, instead of just busting through the door with it, saying, here it is, you sort of want to say, hey, this is why it's important. And this is how you can use it, et cetera. And I think that's an important lesson that I've, learned in life and I think can be applied generally, is that there's, it's only the first step is to sort of, come up with a solution. But the second step is to sort of lay the groundwork for it and make sure everyone understands it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. And really the innovation to be shown through that as well is really, really important, but the people need to recognize it. They need to see the value for it. So I think for businesses, it's the same thing. The Mosley effect for businesses, I think very important as well. So yeah, most definitely. Jonny, I've got a question. Your website reads, using unorthodox training methods and adopting the 360 mute grab from his peers, he stretched the existing rules and won the 1998 Olympic gold, exhibiting the new style of skiing to the mainstream recreational skier. That's very innovative, talking about innovation. So if you apply that to businesses, how can they apply the innovative thinking and spirit that inspired you to create a new style of skiing?
Yeah, I think one thing to kind of, I guess, take away from my skiing stories here and there is that, I don't think you want to be, you don't want to wait to, I guess, reinvent yourself, if you will. And I know that's a theme, but I think, making those transitions is, you want to make those transitions a little bit earlier than you think. I think a lot of us, kind of ride it out a little bit too long. But, to use the analogy of surfing, while you're on one wave, it's not a bad idea to look over the back and see what's coming down, and get ready for that. And I talk about transitions a lot. I mean, transition is a word in skiing that means a lot. The way it's defined as the curve of the jump as you take off and the landings, and you want to hit transitions. And so I think that's one of the important lessons. I also I think, if you look back at not only from a physical standpoint, I think even with the fundamentals, the basics, for example, when I talked about that machine we made going into 1998, I think there's a way always to look at problems, business issues, and kind of break them down into small pieces, which is and enjoy the process of trying to figure out how to gain an advantage in that one little piece. For example, like when we made that machine, and allowed me to kind of get extra time working on that one little skill versus my competitors, and sort of digging into that component and being really critical. Or for example, I think if you look at adding in the 360 mute grab to my run in 1998, I think that's, an example where if I just know this even in my own business, I'm sort of always looking at what is happening around me, what is coming up below me, what is the environment. I mean, I remember I used to just stand there on the side of the run and watch skiers go down and down and down. And it's not like I was inventing something. I was just figuring out from watching other people how they were navigating the course. What were the key components? What were the tricks? And same thing with when I did the 360 mute grab. It was a small group of French Canadian kids that were sort of the next generation below me, and they had just got on the World Cup, and they had been really inspired by snowboarding, and started creating a new style of skiing, grabbing their skis, which no one had done before. And so I started sort of hanging out with them and sort of digging into that, even though I was on my own track over here, competing and winning on the World Cup. I was kind of like, putting my fingers in this spot over here and just sort of hanging out with these guys and seeing what they had going on. And then I integrated it eventually, with success. And I feel like you kind of got to keep doing that. You got to keep overlapping. Even, after the 2002 Olympics, I sort of saw that my career was coming to, sort of, I kind of maybe had one more Olympics left, but I wanted to sort of transition beforehand. So I sort of, had the opportunity after hosting Saturday Night Live to kind of do TV stuff. So that jumped me into that. But during the TV stuff, I didn't really, I knew that was going away too. Like I saw TV starting to fade into YouTube and all that stuff. So I started integrating myself and kind of getting into the next phase of I guess, media and TV and entertainment. So I guess the simple answer to the question is just keep looking for those transitions before you need to make them.
Yeah. And I would add that reinvention is very important there as well, to reinvent yourself. Jonny, just leading into that, you mentioned your career after your skiing. So I think it's safe to say that all businesses have been affected by the pandemic. How have you adapted your business, in particular, going from in-person meetings to online meetings? How have you adapted from your side onto that?
Yeah, it's the pandemic has been interesting for everybody, obviously. It's interesting because I really enjoy, being around people. Skiing is a very social, sport, and so a lot of the companies I work with, a lot of the marketing efforts I'm involved in do involve an in-person component. In fact, I would argue that mostly involves an in-person component. And so I've, tried to be effective via Zoom and online has been interesting. But I'll say that I've really been able to apply a lot of those experiences that I dipped in and out of over the years. For example, going into TV hosting. After hosting Saturday Night Live, I hosted the show on MTV for the Challenge forever, and they kind of taught me how to be on camera. But I also saw how they produce shows, and then also eventually when I quit that show because I felt like it was not really going in the direction that involved all my skills, and I got into producing shows like what's called Wildest Dreams, Jonny Moseley's Wildest Dreams, which is a branded content piece for the state of California, which involves TV hosting, but it involves adventure and also producing and stuff like that. So I guess what I'm saying is that I've had to kind of utilize all these skills that I kind of picked up over the years to then apply them to the marketing efforts of the companies I work with. For example, I just did a whole virtual red carpet for the Warren Miller show, where typically that's a live in-person event where people go to the shows all over the country, and we had to kind of replicate something similar online that I hosted, and it turned out to be a perfect kind of interplay of all the things I had picked up over the years. Had never put them all together in that way, but I was lucky I had kind of the basics.
Very interesting, very interesting. And like you said, I think everybody is going through this at the same time, and adjusting is really, really important.
Yeah.
Jonny, anything from your side you want to tell the audience that hasn't been asked yet? Any thoughts on your side around the agility resilience? What final message can you bring to the people of what they should be looking for and how they should be making certain that they take the opportunity and do not delay or procrastinate to really go and do it? Anything final words from your side towards the audience?
I think what you mentioned right there, opportunity, is the mindset that you have to have. And it really is an opportunity to do something a little bit different, to learn something new. I mean, I don't know how many times your panelists talked about learning, talked about experimenting. And I think that's an important mindset to have, that this is something that provides an opportunity to figure something new out, or understand a new medium, or get into something else. And the genius about, where we're at regarding the cloud and just the ability, the technology that we have, is you can really sort of, look over that next wave. You can make those transitions while you're doing something else. Like, you used to have to quit one job to do another job, or to travel there. I mean, to figure out how to do something like that. But you can sort of play with multiple different areas. I mean, I'm involved in so many different arenas, from actual physical skiing to, podcasting to broadcasting. And I can sort of turn the corner and look on the backside of things. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, is this is an opportunity in many respects to look at the next thing coming down the line and take advantage of it without much risk.
Yeah. No, and thank you very much for that. We've just got a question coming from the audience that I want to throw out there. We're sitting here in an online event talking virtually, and it is sort of weird if you do a panel that you don't see the people that are sitting next to you. You can read them much easier. So are there any online events that you attended or spoken at this year that were particularly memorable for you?
Yeah, I did I work with a retailer that's based out of the East Coast, and they do a lot of in-person stuff and float around the country and do ski shows and try to get, drum up, business. And that wasn't happening this year. And so, and I usually test a lot of equipment for them, do reviews. So we kind of developed a whole, an online ski show where we interviewed all the different experts in the field and tried to get people up to date on what the season might look like. I basically conducted a bunch of interviews. I was the Nico Steenkamp of this show. And, but what was cool about it was that, on one day I was interviewing Klaus Overmeyer, who's 101 years old, an original of the ski industry, invented Overmeyer clothing as well as invented a bunch of the ski brake, down coat. He invented all this stuff. Just one of the coolest guys. I interviewed him from his Austrian cabin out in the mountains of Aspen. And, I was able to communicate with him and show him pictures of him as a kid. And, something I would never be able to do. It would be hard to get him to do in person. He doesn't travel anymore. And then the next day I was interviewing Patrick Dempsey, who's a big skier, who I would also never be able to get in person, within the days. And so that was and then we put Natalie Morales on, who was a commentator I knew from the Olympics. So, these types of events where you think, wow, oh man, we got to do this all online. This is a bummer. But to put a crew like that together in a small window and put it online for a live event was pretty cool.
I can imagine, especially with that lineup that you had.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you. I've been looking at your screen, and especially the skis behind you that's showing there.
Yeah.
Any relevance to the Olympics or anything for those skis, or?
Yes, there are. I remember, I think when we came on for rehearsal, they said, "Oh, those swords back there," and it's funny. they kind of look like swords because skis in the late '90s were so skinny and pointy. They don't look anything like skis do today. But yes. I don't have a ton of all my, my wife does not let me put all my, self-aggrandizing things on the wall. But these are the skis that I won the Olympics in 1998. It's a K2 winter heat. It's 191, so it's 190 centimeters long, which is ridiculous to ski moguls. And now I think they ski on like 180s or 175s. And it's obviously the significant moment in my life, and so they're up on the wall.
I can imagine. They should have a special place.
Yeah,
Jonny. So sorry, some questions come further, but I promise this is one of the last ones.
No problem.
Any exciting plans you can share with us for 2021?
Well, it's hopefully once we get back to work here, I'll be back on the hill skiing and travel around the country. But yeah, most of my stuff is definitely on hold as far as the typical stuff I do. We literally can't go to Canada and ski, which is something I would normally do with a Warren Miller film or my Johnny Mosley Wildest Stream series. We really can't go do much of that. So I'm looking forward to kind of getting back to those activities. I think as soon as it opens up, that'll be great. But not planning anything too big right now.
No, I can imagine. All right, Jonny, I want to thank you very much for participating today. It was great to have you on here to hear your stories. I think especially the Mosley effect of people thinking about it, doing that, the fact how you bounce back and you really changed the whole skiing for mogul skiing. I think it's really great, the accomplishments that you've done, but also to your point of staying at the top is not always that easy. You continuously need to reinvent yourself to stay competitive, to change again. So I think that's very, very relevant to everybody out there. So thank you very much for being with us, sharing those great stories that you have. And I hope to hear very soon some more stories about you of the new innovation you're going to bring out into skiing. So, so that will be great.
Thank you, Nico.
Thank you very much.
Hope you all have a great season. Make some turns. Ski resorts are open, so
we'll try. And then I just want to close the session. So I want to thank everybody that once again that made time in their calendars to join us today. I hope that you had some really some useful ideas coming out from the panelists. I know that I definitely got some, and that can help you to be more successful in your business. If you have any further questions, anything, please feel free to reach out to us. Happy to support you further on this from the Capgemini, Lohika, and AWS side. So thank you very much. Stay safe and goodbye. Thank you very much.